Somalians ripped off that state for billions of dollars, billions, every year. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country.
On January 15th, before most of Cleveland, Ohio woke up. A system that had been draining billions quietly began to collapse. Over 30...
I wonder why this was swept under the rug, why we didn't hear nothing about this.
Exploded by nearly 40%, while the population barely changed. And families across Cleveland waited 8 to 11 months just to find basic child care. Outside, clinics were empty, lights left on, exam rooms untouched. Then, care. Inside the system, 40%, while the began to collapse. Over 30 months, Ohio's Medicaid budget exploded by nearly 40%, while the population barely changed. And families across Cleveland waited 8 to 11 months just to find basic child care. Inside the system, thousands of medical treatments were logged every single week. Outside, clinics were empty, lights left on, exam rooms untouched. Then, investigators noticed the timestamps. More than 40,000 patient records created in the middle of the night. With data so identical, it could not belong to real people. What followed led from fake clinics to offshore money routes. And finally to a dawn raid on January 15th that uncovered millions in cash. Industrial money counting machines, fentanyl hidden inside food aid, and human beings trapped behind locked doors. This was not just fraud. This was a welfare system turned into a weapon. If you care about investigations that expose what powerful people hope you never see, make sure you subscribe to this channel and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And do you think silence protects the vulnerable or protects crime? It began with numbers that moved too fast for any normal system to explain. Over a period of 30 months, the Medicaid budget of Ohio rose from $8.9 billion to $12.3 billion, an increase of 38%, while the population of the state barely moved, growing just 3.1% in the same time frame. That kind of gap is not growth. It is a warning sign. Like paying for groceries for a full neighborhood while only a few people live in the house. In Cleveland, the pressure was visible on the ground. Parents waited 8 to 11 months just to secure basic child care. Community clinics reported constant staff shortages. Nurses were stretched thin. Doctors reduced office hours. And entire wings of clinics sat unused for days at a time. Yet inside the Medicaid system, the numbers told a completely different story. Thousands of treatments were logged every single week. Claims kept pouring in without pause, even as real exam rooms remained dark and silent. Then a Medicaid auditor noticed something impossible to ignore. More than 41,000 patient records were created between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., night after night, with 87% of the data fields matching almost perfectly, a pattern no human population could ever produce. 3 internal reports were written, and all 3 disappeared. They were flagged as politically sensitive and labeled as... That was the moment the case moved upward to federal hands. The FBI, ICE, began reviewing the data, not with rifles or breaching tools yet, but with spreadsheets, timestamps, and silence. At that point, it still looked like a large fraud, just money. But ask yourself this: who benefits when billions disappear quietly? And who had the power to make sure no one was allowed to ask why? As federal analysts followed the money upward, every path kept pointing to the same name, again and again, until it was no longer possible to ignore. Amira Hassan Noor was 41 years old, a first-term Ohio State Senator, elected just 3 years earlier, and widely praised as one of the fastest-rising political figures in the state. To the public, she was a symbol of progress and stability, someone who spoke calmly, smiled often, and promised protection for people who felt unseen by the system. She sponsored 3 major community health bills that expanded Medicaid access. And she championed a low-income housing fund worth $420 million, appearing at ribbon cuttings, town halls, and press conferences across Cleveland. In nearly every speech, her message stayed the same: protect the vulnerable, defend marginalized families, and stop discrimination hidden inside audits and oversight. But behind the scenes, the picture looked very different. According to a sealed federal indictment, Amira Hassan Noor did not own clinics, did not run nonprofits, and did not sign fraudulent claims. Instead, she provided legal cover for 19 nonprofit organizations, intervened when inspectors requested site visits, and quietly redirected scrutiny away from empty buildings and missing staff. Inside a confiscated server, investigators found a financial flowchart, and near the center was her name, shortened, coded, but unmistakable. She did not manage clinics. She managed the people who were never allowed to inspect them. What do you think happens when oversight answers to power instead of truth? The final trigger did not come from a person, a phone call, or a confession. It came from a logistics record that did not belong in a charity file. While federal analysts were still tracing Medicaid payments and nonprofit links, one shipping invoice connected to North Star Community Health quietly broke the pattern, because it listed repeated deliveries of humanitarian rice while carrying a federal transport classification reserved for chemically controlled cargo. The same category used for industrial substances that require sealed storage and restricted handling. The weight numbers were wrong. The routing fees were wrong. And the safety codes were wrong. Because rice does not demand chemical containment. And food aid does not move under hazardous transport rules unless something else is hidden inside. When investigators traced the delivery routes, every shipment led to the same destination: a warehouse on the edge of Cleveland, sitting inside an abandoned industrial corridor roughly 28 minutes from the city center, officially registered as a food distribution hub, yet flagged in multiple federal systems for restricted access and limited disclosure. That discrepancy collapsed the entire theory of a simple fraud. At that moment, the investigation crossed from financial review into operational threat, and sealed federal search warrants were authorized across multiple locations at once, without notification, without delay. At 4:18 a.m., Cleveland was silent. The temperature sat at 18 degrees below 0 Celsius, cold enough to turn breath into ice and make metal brittle. And there were no sirens, no flashing lights, and no warnings. Because speed and silence were now the most important tools. 52 federal agents moved at the same time, divided into 6 coordinated teams, each carrying sealed federal warrants, wearing standard-issue body armor, and armed with Glock 17 pistols, M4 carbines, and Remington 870 breaching shotguns, assigned to controlled entry units. The first team approached the public service office of the state senator inside the administrative district, a building normally filled with staff and community pamphlets, now dark and locked, where agents entered quietly, cleared room after room, and secured filing cabinets filled with donor records, legal correspondence, and encrypted storage drives, before locating a concealed safe hidden behind a false interior panel. The second team entered North Star Community Health in a low-income neighborhood, a clinic that billed thousands of treatments each week, where agents found empty exam rooms, unused medical equipment, lights left on, computers logged in, and claims processing automatically in real time despite the absence of staff or patients. The third team reached the warehouse outside the city limits, where they breached the loading dock doors and were immediately hit by a sharp chemical odor that did not belong near food. And as they moved inside, they discovered a sealed interior section not listed on any building plans, accessible only through reinforced doors. 2 additional teams entered nonprofit satellite offices listed as youth development and job training centers, where desks were neatly arranged but untouched. Printers were warm, despite no employees present, and filing systems contained thousands of intake forms that differed only by name and identification number. The final team entered a small apartment registered as a skills training classroom, and inside they found rows of server racks filling every room. 17 machines running non-stop, pushing automated Medicaid claims into state systems hour after hour, controlled by scripts that never slept. As the operation unfolded, evidence began stacking rapidly.
Did you hear what he said? So, this is a network of people. I wonder if they're all Somalian. But somebody had to program a system that generates names and these forms that's being filled out. The government gets billed, the money gets channeled, and it's also got fentanyl in there. So, I wonder why we didn't hear about this. Man, I tell you, we got to get these people out of here, especially out of our government. What in the world? Is this the modern day pirate? Because you know that's what Somalians, I guess their thing is. Most people, that's all they could do is pirate. There's no other form of income. So basically they sit around and steal from each other and other people that may go near them, I guess, in their country. So the people that's over here, I guess that's the way they were brought up and trained, so now they've took it to another level. They've got a little educated, but it's like you can take the people out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the people. We've seen that time and time again. It's always what, gets them in the end is those curses that were bred into their life that they never got rid of. Crazy, man. Crazy.
Agents seized $11.6 million in cash stored in drawers, safes, and plastic containers, alongside 6 industrial-grade money-counting machines worn from constant use. Equipment no legitimate nonprofit ever needs. That money was only what could be seized on site. The cash.
So she was disguising these activities through a nonprofit. That was their cover. There again, I wonder how that got passed.
Cash on hand, not the full amount tied to the network. At the warehouse, agents cut open rice bags marked as humanitarian aid and immediately noticed the weight was wrong, because inside each bag were vacuum-sealed packages packed tightly, each containing fentanyl powder wrapped for transport, enough to supply thousands of street-level doses. The chemical smell intensified as agents documented the scene, secured the area, and photographed serial markings, because this was no longer a financial crime scene. It was a narcotics operation, hiding behind the language of charity and relief.
So we know the fentanyl is coming from China. So is this a coordinated attack? We're going to find out later too. In California, it's not just Somalians. In California, a lot of the fraudsters are Russians. So to me, it sounds like this is a coordinated attack. And the bad part is, a lot of it was let in by Americans in the form of the Democratic Party. Stephen A. Smith, or somebody that has his mentality, his thought process, needs to take over the Democratic Party, tear it down and rebuild it. Otherwise, the Democratic Party now, I see them as an enemy of the state. They're in bed with China, Russia, Somalia, anybody else that wants to steal from the American taxpayer, the citizens, the white males that you love to hate, basically. Come on, man. And it's not really a race thing. That was gone before Obama came in there, but it's been hyped up. You can't judge somebody by the color of their skin, but the government just keeps that division and strife going. And it's people on both sides that help feed that monster. You got people like Jasmine Crockett, and then you got that reporter that was on TV saying the N word. So then it just makes it all about race again. The media, you have to watch what you take in. You know, TV, internet, all that used by the government, CIA, all that at one time as weapons. Who's to say they're still not using it? You have to be careful what you bring in. The Bible says the eyes are the window to the soul. So think about it. What you put in is what you're going to learn to live like and be like and believe, and so just be careful. Start your everyday as a warrior, and God is your shield. I'm telling you, you have to.
Every location told the same story. Clean fronts, empty rooms, active systems, and money moving faster than people ever could. By the time the first light appeared on the horizon, investigators understood that what they were looking at was not inflated invoices or sloppy oversight, but an organized system designed to extract billions, shield itself from inspection, and move dangerous materials through structures that appeared harmless to anyone who did not look closely. The moment fentanyl appeared inside bags of donated food, the case crossed a line that could not be reversed. This was no longer about Medicaid fraud. It was about how a protected system had been allowed to grow powerful enough to hide drugs, cash, and machines behind locked doors, while everyone else was told not to ask questions. Ask yourself this: how many people had to look away for this to operate? And how long had silence been mistaken for compassion? Once the raids exposed,
That's mine and your money. Taxpayers' money that the government makes us give, takes it, and it's supposed to take care of us. But yet, it's never enough for them. Day in and day out, you got people coming out of retirement 70 and 80 years old having to work because they can't afford to live, because it's never enough. We got to keep working the American taxpayers to the bone so that we can give it to other countries, or embezzle it, or just misuse it, mishandle it. Come on, man. The government's supposed to protect the citizens of the United States, not destroy them. Thank God we got Trump in there. Hopefully he can get some of this reversed. It's so much, though. Maybe my grandkids will reap what Trump's doing. Until then, we're stuck to being slaves and giving every dime to the government. I just don't get it, man. It's not right. The Bible says that we're supposed to respect our leaders. I struggle with that, man. I really do. I have to pray about it every day, because how am I supposed to respect a thief that's robbing and stealing from hard-working American citizens? They don't deserve respect. They deserve a ass whipping.
what was inside the rooms. Investigators no longer asked if the system was broken. They began measuring how far it had been bent. Over a period of 30 months, the network siphoned $12.8 billion from Medicaid, an amount equal to roughly 16% of the entire state welfare budget. Money that was supposed to pay for care, housing, and food, but instead vanished through 19 nonprofit organizations that existed mostly on paper. The money did not stay local. Transaction trails showed funds moving through layered accounts and service contracts, routed overseas through financial corridors in Dubai and Nairobi, disguised as consulting fees, technology services, and international aid coordination. A path designed to blur ownership and delay detection. At the ground level, the system rested on three simple pillars. The first was the ghost clinic and the ghost patient. On paper, certain clinics reported 4,200 patient visits every week, but when agents walked those addresses, they found no doctors, no nurses, no patients, and sometimes no staff at all. Just locked doors and silent rooms. Behind those claims were 62,000 stolen identities.
The part I'm struggling with is my walk with the Lord. Not because I don't believe in Him, because I do. Without Him, there is no hope at all. And they're slowly trying to take that away as well. But I just don't know what to say, but on a daily I have to arm myself with His Word and really soak into His promises, the Bible, the book of life. Because with the anger that this kind of stuff brings, it's hard. I struggle with it. They say that if you wish somebody death, that you've already committed that sin. So, I don't know, if you're like me and struggling with this, man, just turn to the Bible. That's our only hope. We can't put our faith in man. And as strong a man as Trump is, he's got flaws too. Our faith needs to be in the Lord above. You know, we've let all these Muslims and different religions over here, and God says that there's only one God. Notice I didn't say we've let all these other gods over here. The religions are over here, and that's what America was founded on. Is that what's going to be what bites us in the butt? There's only one true God. Jesus Christ is our Savior. And if you can't accept that, I really don't have anything in common with you. My Bible says that if you're lukewarm, that He'll spit you from His mouth. So you're either for God or against Him. Right? And there's no other God other than Jesus Christ. You know, so when they get on TV and these riots and say, this is our brothers and sisters that's being deported, blah, 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 blah. First of all, the ones talking usually are not Christians. So therefore, you're not my brother, you're not my sister. And the ones that they're deporting are criminals that are killing our people, raping our kids, and stealing our money. So I just want to know that the government, our government that we pay for, is working for us. That's all.
Harvested from vulnerable populations, fed into automated systems that submitted Medicaid invoices between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., hour after hour, night after night, without human involvement. The second pillar was the algorithm. Investigators isolated a single cluster of false claims that drained $64 million over 18 months, powered by billing software that exploited the absence of mandatory site inspections. A loophole that allowed claims to be paid first and questioned later. If ever. The system trusted data more than reality, and the software knew it. The third pillar was protection. Whenever auditors raised concerns, the response was immediate and coordinated. Reviews were labeled as attacks on the community. Inspectors were accused of bias, and internal warnings were dismissed as politically dangerous. Behind that shield were payments described as advisory fees, ranging from $25,000 to $40,000 per instance, quietly routed through intermediaries to stall audits, redirect staff, and ensure that certain doors were never opened. Taken together, the design was not complex. It did not require genius. It required permission. The system was not hacked. It was invited in, protected by language, paperwork, and fear of asking the wrong questions. At this stage, investigators understood the truth. This was not random fraud. It was an assembly line built to run without witnesses. Ask yourself this: when a system rewards silence and punishes scrutiny, how long does it take before crime becomes routine? The true cost of the operation was not counted in spreadsheets or budgets. It was discovered on the warehouse floor, inside bags that were supposed to feed families who had nothing. When agents finished opening the donated rice sacks, they counted 96 kilograms of fentanyl, sealed tight in vacuum-wrapped bricks, hidden beneath layers of grain, packed carefully so the weight would not raise suspicion. Yet every package carried lot markings that investigators recognized immediately, codes linked to Mexican cartel distribution routes that had already flooded multiple American cities. This was the moment the case stopped being about fraud and became something far more personal. Inside the same facility, agents found 39 people living and working in locked rooms with no windows.
So did you hear what he said? Cartels? So Somalians are working with cartels. Great. But that's probably why Trump's wanting to go after the cartels in Mexico. And if Mexico's president has got a weak stomach for it or just can't handle it, or maybe she's on the take, maybe she's getting paid. You know, if we're going to crack down on, we need to crack down. So if we need to take Mexico and make it part of the United States, then, oh well. I like tacos and salsa anyway. But it's got to be stopped, man. Keep going, Trump. Don't stop. Balls to the wall, baby.
Forced to handle packaging
materials without protection. Their passports confiscated. Their movement controlled. And their lives reduced to a single number written on paper. Each of them carried the same debt, $45,000. They were told it was a migration fee, a debt they would
never finish paying, because refusal meant threats sent back to families overseas, names, addresses, and warnings that were meant to keep them silent. Internal files recovered from the servers revealed the scale no one outside the system had ever seen. More than 1,120 individuals were documented as having entered the country through sponsored programs, enrolled briefly in aid systems, and then disappeared from official records, absorbed into labor pipelines that were never meant to be visible. As the sun began to rise, the final move was already underway. At 7:06 a.m., federal agents approached a lakefront home registered under a housing development company listed as affordable housing, a property far beyond the reach of any public servant's salary. Inside, the rooms were quiet, suitcases partially packed, documents stacked neatly, and the operation ended the way it always does, not with speeches, but with handcuffs. Agents seized $53 million in cash and assets, traced through shell companies and nonprofit fronts, and escorted the architect of the system away as neighbors watched in disbelief. In the end, the truth was simple. Welfare was only the cover. People were the commodity. When stories like this surface, it is tempting to focus only on the scale, the money, the raids, the shock value of what was hidden behind locked doors. But that misses the real lesson, because this case was never just about crime. It was about how easily good intentions can be weaponized when no one is willing to ask uncomfortable questions.
Uncomfortable questions. Should we ask them? Absolutely. Especially when it comes to integrity and just assuming people are going to be honest. Those days are done, man. That stopped when we opened the borders a long time ago. When you're letting people that come from a different form of government, which, you know, the Russian once said that he would destroy democracy without lifting a finger. All you brainiacs will know who I'm talking about. Is this the way it's going to happen? They infiltrated our country through the Democratic Party. And now they're over here proceeding with their plans to destroy America. Thank God Trump's in there. That's all I can say. So it just makes me wonder why we didn't hear about this one. Makes you wonder, huh? Makes you wonder. So here we go again. They say California is going to be even worse. Like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be more nationalities. You're going to have Russians, probably some Chinese, definitely some Chinese influence, which now we have to deal with that even more as Canada has opened up trades and a lot of their business is now going to China. We'll see how that goes. Trump's going to tariff them to death. Hopefully it works. Stay tuned. We got a lot more coming.